This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? This is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is a priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about as a parent or caregiver, and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. Getting into a vehicle and driving from place to place is a normal part of everyday life for many of us. We go from point A to point B without incident, but unfortunately for many others, a trip in their vehicle results in a life-changing crash. This episode will be a different format from the others, and just a warning to listeners that we'll be sharing information on and details about a vehicle crash involving children. Today, I'm joined by Eran Jones, who is a child passenger safety advocate, a child passenger safety technician, but most importantly, a parent. I invited Eran to come on Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast to share her very personal story about a crash that changed her life and the life of her family. Eran, thanks so much for being willing to come on to the podcast and share your story.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be part of this podcast.
Thank you. Can you maybe, if you want to start out by telling me a bit about Haley and Trent and your family before the tragedy happened?
So we were the average New Brunswick family. There was my ex-partner. He had 2 children from a previous relationship, which was Haley and Owen. And then I got pregnant with Trent. So our family was complete. And like many of the Atlantic provinces, families move out west for better earnings and the better life, essentially. What we didn't know is that better life would end up in tragedy. So before we get to that, Haley and Trent. Haley was a really bubbly, spunky little girl. She really loved the song Red Solo Cup. And she really, really liked ladybugs. That was her thing. And for Trent, he was my first biological child. I suffered multiple miscarriages before having him. So he was my rainbow baby, my first rainbow baby. He changed my entire life. He was just, it's hard to explain how wonderful of a little boy he was. Mm-hmm. We had special moments. Like, everybody kept telling me that you shouldn't be waking up at 2:00 in the morning to cuddle him on the couch. And now looking back, I have all those memories of just us cuddling on the couch at 2 a.m. So he really loved bunnies, mm-hmm. and Thomas the train. So I do have a lot of those little toys that I still keep on and hold on to as a memory.
As a memory. Yeah. And it's been 10 years. It'll be 10 years this March, right?
Yes.
When the crash happened. So can you tell us a bit, share what you feel comfortable with about, the day of the crash and what happened?
Let's go back to the day before,
okay.
Which was my birthday. My birthday is March 20th. And so on that day, we celebrated. My sister-in-law had brought me a cake. She brought me a wonderful Eeyore teddy bear because I kind of was obsessed with Disney, Winnie the Pooh. So she got me an Eeyore and a wonderful fruit cake. It was delicious. And then the next day, they were announcing snow. But as we all know, this is Canada. You drive according to the road conditions, and you will and can be okay. So that's what we did. The next morning, we checked the forecast, and we lived in Alberta at the time. So the main highway from Slave Lake, where we were residing, to Edmonton, if it's too bad of a condition, the government closes it. And then there's no access, no nothing. So the roads were completely open. And again, drive according to conditions. So we loaded up the children in the vehicle, all in age-appropriate car seats according to the law. And away we went. We were driving slower than normal, of course, because it was snowing. And we pulled over at one of those truck stop areas on the highway. Christine stopped to have a smoke, and I sat in the car with the kids, and we just, laughed and played around. They were fighting with each other. And then I snapped that very famous photo that everybody has seen, the last moments of my 3 children together. Roughly, I want to say half an hour, 45 minutes later, I don't know the exact time, I had seen this white Dodge Ram pickup truck almost hit a minivan quite far ahead from us. And I had looked at my sister-in-law and I said, like, what is he thinking? And then lo and behold, like not long after, he tried to pass a semi-truck and a construction truck and came right at us. My sister-in-law said to hold on, I'm taking the ditch, and that was it. We were struck head on. We were going 90 and he was going 120, and everything just spun and spun and spun. And I momentarily, it's huge head trauma. So I momentarily blacked out, but came back to, and, I knew Christine was gone. I knew just by the way she was positioned. It's like, you just know. I couldn't see Haley. And I heard my baby boy take his last breaths. And it something I don't ever wish on anybody. My oldest, Owen, how he survived is a pure miracle. And he was screaming. He was fully conscious. And he had a level 4 concussion. And a whole bunch of broken bones and a collapsed lung. And the doctors even told us, we don't, and he was conscious in the ambulance. Like everybody, the paramedics and everybody, they were just like, I don't understand how he's talking. And yes, it wasn't all coherent, but he was talking, which somebody with a level 4 concussion, that's just, it doesn't happen. So we went to the hospital. We were rode in the same ambulance. It's a double wide ambulance, which was just piloted as a program when we had access to it at that point. So they brought us to the first hospital in Westlock, where I don't know what happened after that. I was not told my children were dead, even though I knew, but I didn't know. I wasn't told till several hours later, when my partner had showed up, and I said, how are the kids? Are the kids okay? Where are they? And that's when he let me know that Christine, Haley, and Trent had not made it. And I just, at that point, I was I was in shock, clearly, you just told me that my kids are gone. Growing up, I knew I was going to be a mom. That was my dream, was to be a mom. And I met my now husband, and we have a daughter together. So it's wonderful. Me and my ex-partner, we did have Oliver, our rainbow baby, after the accident. And he is the most amazing little kid ever. Smart, and he'll be able, he could tell you something out of the encyclopedia if he wanted to. He uses pretty big words, some that we don't quite understand, but he knows them. So, and Elizabeth, she's spunky. I love her. She's got character. She takes after me. She's a go-getter. So, and my husband's wonderful. He supports me in everything. And we're one great big blended family all together.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear that you've been able to deal with, if you ever be able to deal with, people talk about closure and all that stuff, and I think there's, varying degrees of that, but you've turned your experience into some really focused activities, and you did that because you understood learned afterwards that there were things that could have been done differently that may or may not have changed the actual outcome, but may have.
Could have.
Yeah, could have, as you say. Can you share what your journey learning about that and where you've come to today?
Yeah, so not long, ever since the accident, I've always like paid it forward, found ways that I could help others. And then one day I was just scrolling through Facebook and I noticed this post about a little girl in the US who had survived internal decapitation. And I was like, whoa, that's how my son died. So what can I do to help prevent that if this child survived? And so that's where it started. That's where the light bulb started. And at that point, I had gotten pregnant with my daughter, and a few techs, car seat technicians here in the Fredericton area were like, hey, you should take the course, and hey, you should share your story. And my story had initially started with advocacy to change the reckless driving laws. However, that's a bigger project. And when Catherine from Child Safety Link had reached out to me, she's like, your story has power. And I didn't know what that meant at first. I had no idea what the power would be. And it just took off from there. It started with, online campaigns and online, like, hey, this is my story. This is what happened to me. And this can happen to you if you do not use your car seat correctly. And, it got me looking into more of like the legislation and the federal legislation as well around child passenger safety. And I was just shocked at how long it had been since anything had been updated, like everywhere. So, it lit a fire in me, and, 2 viral posts later, I'm blooming and I have this amazing experience too, right? Like, so it's just, I've helped out thousands of families, and that's not an exaggeration. I've helped out thousands of families since I've been certified in 2018. And it's so rewarding reading the comments and like on one of the mom groups, someone had shared my post, and one of the moms was like, if it wasn't for Eran, my kids wouldn't have survived our rollover. And that just means so much, like, even though that the governments are not always listening to me and not scheduling the meetings and not doing the change is happening. Change is happening because even in the mom groups, the moms now, the majority of them are all like, oh no, you have to rear face pass too. So, my message is getting across, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I think they can relate to you as a parent, but also in your role as a car seat technician. Maybe you can explain a little bit briefly about what do you do as a car seat technician? How do you advise people? And you gave a couple of examples of the results of that work that you're doing.
As a car seat technician, I help parents, caregivers, professionals who transport children learn how to install and use their car seats correctly, with the end result of them feeling confident in themselves to be able to do it themselves. It's not easy as it seems. Car seats come in all shapes and sizes, cars come in all shapes and sizes, and children come in all shapes and sizes. There is not a universal fit for everybody. So teaching parents that, not every seat fits every car has been difficult, especially with the marketing campaigns for seats on sale and stuff like that. Oh, this is the only seat you'll ever have to buy. And then it's like, okay, I'm sorry, but it really doesn't work in your vehicle. Or vehicle manufacturers that are advertising their vehicle as a family vehicle, when in fact you can't fit all 4 of your kids in your minivan if you have, like, it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's great to teach the parents and caregivers and all of that how to do it properly. It's a really fulfilling feeling, especially when I get return clients. They've had their second and third children, and then they're like, "Oh, can you help us again?" It's a really rewarding position. It's volunteer based in my province, and hopefully someday it will be a paid position, which would be great. But yeah, it's very rewarding.
And it's so important to get the right information. As we learn more, the recommendations change. And, I know when I used to speak to parents about car seats, they'd say, "Oh, I have a dumb question." And I said, there is no dumb question. It takes, 2-3 days to be certified as a technician, and then repeated, upgrading of your skills. You'd think it would be easier than it is.
Plus, our curriculum just got updated, so it's an even longer course with more education for us being trained as technicians. So it's everybody who thinks that, oh, you just got all your information off the internet and that's how you became certified. No. There's a lot of hands-on and a lot of technical, and I have clients that are like, "How do you know so much about all these seats?" It's like, I do so many of them that I have. It's embedded in my brain. You ask me about a certain seat and, oh yeah, no, that's not going to work with your car. Use this one instead. The majority of my clients are low-income families or newcomer families, so all while remaining budget-friendly as well. So,
right.
It's
You talked a bit about the legislation and the law, and you have a Haley and Trent's law that you are working on in New Brunswick. And we know from those of us who are, work in this area, that the best practice recommendations often the law is delayed in reflecting what those best practices are. What is your vision for Haley and Trent's law, and what do you think needs to be changed?
My main vision for Haley and Trent's law is that all of Canada becomes unified with a common car seat legislation, a common equal car seat legislation. As of right now, all the provinces have pretty much the same. However, there's some of them that are different in like the weight requirements and stuff like that. So right now, New Brunswick, for example, you have to rear face until 1 year and 1 year and 22 pounds. You can booster at 40 pounds. And to be out of a booster completely, you have to be 80 pounds or 4'9". And all of those are so minimum and so outdated. The legislation in New Brunswick hasn't been updated in 20 years. The only reason it was updated was because the top tether became mandatory in Canada. So, and altogether, the seatbelt legislation law hasn't been updated since 1983. And that's older than me. And when it was written in place, it was actually put in place for grown men, not grown women anyways. So there's a big gap between what it has to be for it to be all updated. So working provincially, one province at a time is going to be a lot easier than federal at the moment. But I will get there. I will. I would like to see things updated to reflect best practice and the AAP and the Canadian Pediatric Society. And, which is rear facing till you max out the limits of your seat with a minimum of 2 years and 22 pounds. However, maxing out that seat is goal. That's where you want to be. To booster, we need an age limit on our booster laws for the provinces that do have a booster law. We need to add that 4 years minimum and 40 pounds. It has to be and, it can't be or or else we're going to have children that are way too little in boosters. And to be out of the booster would be 12 years old or 4'9", and that the child is able to 5-step in a vehicle. 5-step is when you have your belt positioned properly on your body to help you in the event of collision, so that all the main hard points on your body are able to hold you in place in the event of a collision. And one of the main reasons that we want all this raised, and I talk about maximum of the seat, is because bone maturity doesn't start until the age of 4. And in some cases, depending on the child, that bone maturity won't even start to solidify till closer to age 6 and 7. So we have to slow down and stop wanting to skip to the next step so fast, when even though your child is, let's say, a 50-pound 3-year-old, which it does happen, that child still has 3-year-old bones. So keeping those bones protected is going to be the most important part in your role as a parent and a caregiver to keep that child safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on every ride, being safe and being buckled in the appropriate seat, in the appropriate way. We're going to wrap up, but what is the one piece of advice that you would have for other parents when it comes to child passenger safety?
Just because your grandmother or your mom or your aunt did it that way, it doesn't mean that it's how it should be. Child passenger safety is one of the most important things we have to do as parents and caregivers. And it's not a joke. It's not a joke. My children might not have still survived with the appropriate seats. Haley was in a booster, Trent was forward facing, and Owen was in a booster. And Trent should have been rear facing, she should have been in a harness, and he should have been in a harness. So it's not a milestone. It's not a milestone. And a milestone is reaching graduation, getting married, having kids. That's a milestone. Switching your baby around because they don't look comfortable, it's not a milestone.
Thank you, Erin. You are an inspiration to a lot of parents, but also people like me and the team at Parachute and the team at Child Safety Link. It takes a lot to be able to share what you've experienced and to be such a vocal advocate. There are days when it's much more difficult than others, but it really does make a difference because it takes it out of the realm of numbers and data and really talks about what the impact of one crash can have and how important it is to be buckled in safely. The value, as you said, of the family and the memories that you have are fantastic. And, but you wouldn't change that, to have your children back. Right. And prevention like this is exactly that. You can't go back sometimes once you've had that injury. And so thank you for being brave and sharing your story, but also being such a vocal advocate, because we know that these changes need to be made. So thanks so much for sharing your story and for coming on the podcast with me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity, whose mission is for Canadians to live long lives to the fullest by preventing serious and fatal injuries. This episode wraps up Season 1 of Popping the Bubble Wrap. We've covered a wide range of topics, and I've had the honor of talking with parents from across the country who shared their family stories and experiences. When we began this podcast, our goal was to empower and support parents to focus on the real causes of serious injury and to promote popping the bubble wrap on issues that result in the normal bumps and bruises of a child developing. I hope we've achieved this. We want to hear from you. What issues or questions do you want us to cover in Season 2? Write us at poppingthebubblerap@parachute.ca. You can also leave a message at 647-776-5123. That's 647-776-5123. You can continue to help us reach parents and caregivers by sharing this link with your friends and family and giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced for Parachute by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.
This is Story Studio Network.